I'm calling His Excellency Lotfi Zaytoun because he was with us now to join us.
Yes.
Lotfi,
Hello.
join us now, Lotfi. Okay. حاطين فيديوهات فيديو أبو سعود فيديو كل.
Michael, how are you doing?
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Can you hear me?
Lotfi.
Can you hear me, Tuhami?
Yes, yes, Najib, everything is okay. You are hearing me.
Yes, Tuhami.
We have to be in presidential 12. I'm still waiting. Lotfi Zaytoun. Lotfi is joining us. Lotfi, good morning again. Lotfi. حبيبي مسك سامر حدادين بروفيسور لويجي امير ابراشي.
Yes.
واحد اثنين ثلاثة.
Hello, Amir.
Hello, Dr. Nabil, and hello, everyone.
Hi, good to see you.
Good morning.
Someone is missing. So if I'm just to know, Mr. Albabtain, he will be having the video. It will be recorded. Mr. Sampaio also recorded, but I'm seeing Helena in the office. Later on, she will be giving a recommendation. Mr. Excellency Lotfi Zaytoun is with us. Ambassador Helga Medzi. She is here. Haris Vongoli. We are still waiting for Haris Vongoli. I'm going to call Harris from the presidency of, she's okay? She's joining, good. Yeah, no, only we are 12 now, plus 2 with video recorded. So let's start, you can start now the live. Najib, it is live also.
Excellent.
Let's start. We are already on YouTube. Okay, on YouTube, let me check everything is okay. So good morning, excellencies, ambassadors, colleagues, head of international foundations, organizations, NGOs, and civil society foundations. Thank you for joining us in this first webinar organized by Albabtain Cultural Foundation. In fact, we are planning to organize a series of monthly webinars related to the topic of culture of peace, and we will be exchanging with you all ideas and action plans. During the last 6 months, the foundation has been watching and evaluating this delicate and painful scene caused by COVID-19. We found out that 3 main questions should be raised in any pertinent comprehensive analysis. I presume most of you will be trying to provide answers, or at least you are aware about. The first question is the social interactions. These social interactions are moving to a digital format for which society are not prepared. So what are the challenges? The second, what will happen to the so-called social contract? The third, are we going to face a generational divide between those raised before COVID-19 and those raised after? To provide answers, centrally, the value of solidarity is the essential instrument for all solutions. Let's begin now by the video and the opening address of Mr. Abdulaziz Saud Albabtain. He's the president of Albabtain Cultural Foundation. You have his short biography. All of you, most of you, you are his friends, and also I'm with my brothers Najib and Michael, Yahya and others. We are calling him always the president of the culture. So let's start with the video, and then I will be moving to the video of His Excellency Giorgio Sampaio. Mohammed? No, Mr. Abdulaziz.
Bismillah.
الله الرحمن الرحيم. السيد جورجي
سامبايو
رئيس البرتقال الأسبق والممثل الأعلى لتحالف الحضارات بالأمم المتحدة، السادة الوزراء، معالي السيدة مستشارة رئيس ألبانيا، سعادة السفيرة منسقة رئاسة شؤون مالطا، السادة ممثلو المنظمات الدولية والجامعات ومؤسسات المجتمع المدني، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إنه ليسعدني أن أتقدم إليكم بجزيل الشكر على قبولكم المشاركة في هذه الندوة عن بعد، وإن شاء الله سنلتقي جميعا في المنتدى العالمي للسلام الذي تنظمه مؤسستنا برعاية فخامة رئيس مالطا الدكتور جورج فيلا يومي 5 و6 نوفمبر القادم، والذي أنتم مدعوون لحضوره، وأرجو من الله أن نكون في ذلك التاريخ قد استطعنا القضاء على هذا الوباء الذي يفرقنا اليوم. وهذا العام داهم البشرية وفي كل أرجاء العالم الوباء الخطير سريع العدوى كوفيد-19، وقد أصاب في أشهر قليلة أكثر من 9 ملايين من البشر، وتجاوز عدد ضحايا 500,000 حتى الآن. ولم يقتصر الأمر على هذا الحد، بل دمر اقتصادات العديد من الدول، وأصبح عشرات الملايين بلا وظائف فتشردوا، وجاء آخرون وظلوا بلا عائل وبلا نصير. السيدات والسادة، سأحدثكم أولا عن أهم الجهود التضامنية في دولة الكويت، ثم ثانيا عن جهود مؤسسة عبد العزيز البابطين الثقافية في نفس السياق. فلقد بادرت دولة الكويت بتوجيه من قائد العمل الإنساني صاحب السمو الشيخ صباح الأحمد
الصباح حفظه الله ورعاه في إطار الجهود الدولية بالتعاون
مع منظمة الصحة العالمية لاحتواء انتشار فيروس كوفيد-19، وذلك بتقديم دعم مالي لمنظمة الصحة العالمية، حيث قرر مجلس الوزراء تقديم مبلغ 60 مليون دولار، وذلك مساهمة من دولة الكويت في تمويل أبحاث مكافحة الوباء، التزاما منها بواجباتها الإنسانية. وقد أشاد بذلك مدير المنظمة في مؤتمر صحفي، مؤكدا أن دولة الكويت قدمت أكبر وأهم دعم لتمويل برامج الاستجابة للتصدي لهذا الوباء. وعلى الصعيد المحلي داخل الكويت لم يحدث تميز بين المواطن والمقيم، وظلت الكويت كما عهدناها في العدل والمساواة الإنسانية بين الجميع على أرضها. وكان صاحب السمو قد شكر في خطابين تاريخيين في شهري أبريل ومايو المقيمين والمواطنين دون استثناء. وأذكر أيضا على سبيل المثال ما قامت به جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي من دور فاعل في تقديم الهبات العينية للمقيمين في الكويت الذين تضرروا من توقف أنشطتهم الاقتصادية. وفي نفس السياق التضامني الفريد من نوعه قامت حكومة الكويت بإجلاء رعاية الدول العالقين في الكويت إلى بلدانهم في مئات الرحلات مجانا على متن الخطوط الجوية الكويتية وغيرها. وقامت أيضا بأكبر عملية إجلاء في تاريخها لكل المواطنين الكويتيين المقيمين في الخارج، حتى أن مواطنا كويتيا واحدا كان عالقا في السنغال تم إرجاعه إلى الكويت سالما معافى جوا. وقد انطلقت منذ شهر مارس الماضي حملة أطلق عليها اسم فزعة الكويت، نظمتها الهيئة الخيرية الإسلامية العالمية بالتعاون مع أكثر من 40 جمعية خيرية كويتية لدعم الجهود الحكومية في مراجعة هذا الوباء. وقد أعلنت وزارة الشؤون الاجتماعية أن حملة فزعة الكويت جمعت تبرعات بلغت أكثر من 30 مليون يورو، تم جمعها من الخيرين من أبناء الشعب الكويتي الذي جبل على عمل الخير ومساعدة المحتاجين. وتحسن الإشارة أيضا أن الجمعيات الخيرية الكويتية نفذت عددا من المبادرات الإنسانية القيمة استفاد منها آلاف العمال في مناطق الحظر والعزل من خلال الدعم العيني للعديد من الأسر والأفراد. في خصوص مؤسسة عبد العزيز سعود البابطين الثقافية، تؤكد أنها قامت بدورها الإنساني في سياق هذا المد التضامني. فداخل الكويت ساهمنا في حملة فزعة الكويت بدعم مالي، كما ساهمنا في جهود الجمعيات الخيرية بهبات عينية لسنا في حاجة إلى تفصيلها لأننا نعتبر كل ذلك من باب الواجب الإنساني والأخلاقي والديني. أما على صعيد الجهود الدولية فقد قدمنا الدعم المالي للمفوضية السامية للأمم المتحدة لشؤون اللاجئين في مكتب الكويت، وقد حرصت شخصيا على متابعة أوضاع الطلبة الذين تقوم المؤسسة بتدريسهم في العديد من الدول مثل الصومال ومصر وإيطاليا وهولندا وإنجلترا. ووصلت مؤسستنا صرف منحهم الشهرية وتم مضاعفتها للبعض حتى يتمكنوا من دعم عائلاتهم في بلدانهم. سنجدد نحن في الأيام القادمة عملنا ودعمنا للطلبة السوريين وغيرهم من اللاجئين في أوروبا وهم يدرسون في جامعة لشبونة ضمن آلية الاستجابة السريعة للتعليم العالي التي يديرها الرئيس سامبايو، وكان ذلك بطلب منه. ولقد أكدنا الالتزام في هذا الظرف الاقتصادي الصعب بالمنتدى العالمي للسلام العادل في موعده، أي في يومي 5 و6 نوفمبر القادمين في هذا العام بمالطا، وبإشراف ورعاية من السيد الرئيس جورج فيلا. وسيكون ذلك حدثا بارزا بإذن الله نستضيف فيه حوالي 500 ضيف. وفي الختام أجدد لكم شكري الخالص على قبولكم إثراء هذه الندوة بتجاربكم المختلفة، وأرجو لكم جميعا السلامة، وأدعو الله أن ننتصر جميعا على هذا الوباء. وإلى لقاء قريب في مالطا بإذن الله تعالى، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you very much to Mr. Albabtain. I think it was clear, all you got it. Was there any problem regarding this?
Not at all.
No. Everything is okay. Now we move to the second speech of His Excellency, the Jorge Sampaio, the former President of Portugal, who established this rapid mechanism respond to the higher education when it is in crisis. He's presiding this, and today he's the head of his office, Helena Barocco, is also with us. Let's listen together to his briefly speech.
Let me greet all participants in this webinar. My special thanks go to my dear friend Albabtain for his most kind invitation to join this timely initiative co-organized by his foundation. I will share with you some thoughts on the global human, economic and social crisis that was triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic. There's a lot of talk going on about what the world will look like in the future. But for me, whatever the future may hold, the right question to ask is not how the coronavirus will change the world, but rather how our societies and governments will respond to its aftermath. Should we attempt to go back to the status quo ante? Will we get bogged down? Will we use this crisis as an opportunity to implement transformative agendas aiming to achieve social progress? In my view, the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development that applies to all nations worldwide, as well as other common goals agreed at international levels, such as the Paris Climate Agreement, offer a unique global framework to steer a steady course through the current global crisis. So we have no need to reinvent the wheel. Yet amid a huge number of pressing needs, progress made towards achieving these goals is likely to slow down or even be at risk of going backwards, in particular as regards the most vulnerable or specific issues that are unlikely to be prioritized. However, to lose a decade to this fight means losing an entire generation. Let me give you a concrete example. Access to higher education for young people. During times of crisis, higher education tends to be neglected by households that cannot cope with the wide range of needs and expenses, as well as by governments. As the coronavirus pandemic sends shockwaves throughout the world, a whole generation is at risk of being lost across all countries. To prevent this happening, bold collective action is needed to ensure that students in vulnerable conditions are supported, whether students from low-income households, refugees of all kinds, internally or externally displaced, forced migrants or students in conflict-affected societies. Without a shadow of doubt, more than ever today, we need to come together to support young people and empower them through education. We cannot afford to create a COVID-19 lost generation. Providing tertiary education opportunities that enhance young people's resilience and reinforce their skills to thrive and build hope for the future is the only way forward. As Mandela's anniversary is approaching, let us call to mind that he said, and I quote, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world," in order to inspire the needed transformation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President George Sampaio. He's the closest friend of the foundation. Helena, you have some good news regarding what you had asked for. Now we move to His Excellency Michael Frendo. He's the also closest friend of the foundation. He is member of the trustees board of the foundation. He is the former Minister of Foreign Affairs and former Speaker of the Parliament of Malta. What can I say to you, my brother Michael Frendo? The webinar is yours now.
Thank you very much, Tohami, and welcome to our friends and even a former colleague. I see that Helga is there. So thank you very much. I think this is a great opportunity for us to reflect on solidarity with regards to the COVID-19 crisis that the world has seen. In my opinion, this experience has shown the worst and the best in humankind. I think the worst because for a moment, I think everybody felt they were on their own. there was really and honestly, I think, a moment of panic and a selfish scramble for ventilators. You could see that nations were pushing each other out. You could see that countries which were producing them were not allowing them to be exported. Some were even sequestered when they were in transit. So there was a moment where I think the worst of humankind in terms of selfishness came about with panic buying, with everybody feeling on their own. People were buying food and essentials as if they were preparing for a war in terms of the lockdown. But thankfully, I think then as things progressed, this concept changed and people realized that they needed to help each other and they needed to cooperate. We saw this situation developing even within the European Union, for example. Initially, the European Union, also the member states, took a very closed view. It took a little bit of time for the European Union to react. And this is a union based on the concept of solidarity. But it took a bit of time, and nations were initially reacting and even keeping medical equipment to themselves and not even sharing it with other member states. But this changed. Eventually, countries like Germany were even helping Italy with patients and with issues, with medical issues, when initially this had not been the case at all. And we all saw that multilateralism is not dead. I think in the world today, there is a big move towards nationalism and being also looking at an insular way. But we saw that we needed WHO. We needed to have an international response to what was an international crisis. I think the pandemic showed us that we are, of course, very vulnerable, and that as humankind, we are not always the masters of nature, but we are also part of an ecosystem which we must respect. We also saw some very positive things in terms of intergenerational solidarity. We saw the grandparents being seen to by the children and grandchildren. We saw people delivering medicines and goods to their homes. We saw people trying to communicate with their grandparents who were in lockdown so that they could not feel alone. So there were some very human touches, I think, in this crisis. Involuntarily, perhaps, we also showed solidarity with the planet, with the reduction of pollution, with the recapturing of space by nature, with a breather that we somehow gave to Mother Earth in this perhaps unwilling situation where we had to be careful also in terms of spreading the virus itself. So we have many lessons to learn, and I think some of these lessons have been mentioned already by His Excellency Abdulaziz Albabtain and by His Excellency Jorge Sampaio. I think these lessons are here for us to learn. We learned how frail we were, how we need to collaborate with each other, how a virus can put us on our knees, and how we have to get together to be able to share knowledge, to share research, and not be so individualistic, not be so overrun by the urge to make money, by the fact that intellectual property in a solution and a cure or in a vaccine is going to make some people very rich or some countries very rich. But we have to make sure that this does not keep us from collaborating. And I think one of the lessons we have here is the collaboration in medical research. We need to address pandemics, human, global issues with global approaches and with solidarity with each other. We have to also to make sure that if we deliver a solution, this must be delivered to the poor as much as to the rich, to the underdeveloped as much as to the developed, so that we should be already working on transmission channels so that when we are able to actually produce a solution to this problem, that this is transmitted and this is delivered to everybody on our globe. Also, we saw the importance of private sector. I think His Excellency Abdulaziz Albabtain mentioned what the Albabtain Cultural Foundation has been doing from the private sector, the 1% in the world from the private sector who have to show that they have the values of solidarity, the moral values to help and to be part of humanity, and to join the resources also of nation states in philanthropic funding and to make sure that this funding is available to everyone. The COVID-19 has also shown us that larger states cannot be overconfident. We have seen large states, large countries that are very strong in the world economy, countries that are very strong in politics, that have actually not fared very well with COVID-19. Their overconfidence has paid very badly. And I think we have seen that, therefore, one has to be humble in the approach, and one has to be thorough in one's approach, and one has to put health before economic development. And this must be at the basis of everything. Of course, I think COVID-19 showed us how unprepared we were. We had many warnings about pandemics in the global environment. We had even some other pandemics which had reached us, but we were unprepared, and we should have been much more prepared in the way that we tackle this. And we hope that we can learn from this by strengthening multilateralism, not by abandoning the WHO for sure, but by strengthening that mechanism to make sure that we can be more effective together. I think we also have seen that we have to be careful at all times. Solidarity also means the concept, old Roman law concept of bonus pater familias, that we have to be in charge of the family and to take care of the family in the best way, and that therefore we have to work together in global solidarity for a cure or for a vaccine. We need the penicillin type of moment here, which breaks the mold and gives greater security and comfort to humankind against viruses of this nature. I think we have also seen that we have to extend the solidarity towards the post-COVID-19 type of scenario. We have to work together to reignite and to revamp the global economy, because the global economy has taken a big hit. And here, I think the leading economies of the world have a tremendous responsibility to make sure that we can get humanity again to trade, we can get people again to consume, we can get people again to feel free and to be part of society and to participate. We have to bolster international trade and services. We have to increase consumer activity. We have to return to a normality, even if it is a new type of normality. This we cannot do on our own. I think we have seen that although in this world there has been a big trend politically in many countries, including the EU, including the USA, including elsewhere, towards more nationalistic thinking and more thinking in terms of your own well-being and your insular type of thinking, we have seen that the pandemic has shown us that international multilateral collaboration is not an option. It is a necessity. It is something which we must all do to overcome this trying moment for humanity.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for such extremely important speech, which highlights the concept of cooperation, the experience of EU based on solidarity, and how we should shift to the multilateralism, which is more efficient in such a situation. Now, His Excellency Lutfi Zitoun, the Minister of Local Affairs of Tunisia. Before that, he was 2011, 2012, we were together in the same government. He was Minister Counselor to the head of the government of Tunisia. We are very proud that you are with us because we took you from the activities of the government. I know now you have some delicate situations in Tunisia you have to tackle and cope with. So the floor, the webinar is yours, Excellency Lutfi Zitoun.
Thank you very much, my dear friend, Dr. Tuhami. Thank you to our friends in the Albabtain Cultural Foundation. COVID-19 was one of the biggest challenges to humanity. And Tunisia was, I think, the poorest country hit by this pandemic. We recorded our first case in March 2nd, only a few days, 3 days after the new government took charge on February 26th. Tunisia was very lucky that this coincided with the midterm holidays in schools and universities, so pupils and students were at home. By March 12th, cafes, restaurants, and nightclubs were closed. Collective prayers, conferences, and cultural activities were suspended. International flights were stopped and borders were closed on March 16. While on March 22, the president ordered a full lockdown. Now, after 3 months, it seems that Tunisia, in terms of COVID-19, was a big success. We only recorded 1,000 cases, 50 dead. So, and I think this huge success was mainly due to the concept of solidarity. First, political solidarity between the main institution of the state. Every institution took its part in taking the right decisions. The president, as I said, ordered the lockdown. The government formed the High Committee to combat COVID-19. Also, this committee was formed by 12 ministers, the leadership, the army leadership, the security leadership, and the health leadership. And it gathered, it met every 1 day to follow the situation in the country, in the Ministry of Interior, that put us in contact with every governor, all the governors, all the mayors in the country to follow the situation. On the regions, although there was, in the beginning, there was small conflicts between the local authorities and the representative of the central government. We promptly intervened together with my colleague, the Minister of Interior, to coordinate efforts in the regions. That resulted in, these efforts resulted in the region in a huge campaign of solidarity, food collection, financial aid to the underprivileged in all the corners of the country. On the economic level, the government set aside 2.5 billion dinars, which means $860 million, as part of emergency measures, including delaying taxes on small and medium-sized enterprises for 3 months, along with allocating $100 million in unemployment benefits for the first time in Tunisia, and $51 million in financial assistance for the underprivileged family. And the collecting of data was achieved in only 2 weeks. All the state administration was working 24/24 to collect data of these people in order to distribute the aid. So there was a huge solidarity between the public sector and the private sector. Nobody was sacked. Didn't record any mass sacking of employees in the country, although people were in lockdown for about 3 months. 10% only of the administration and the manufacturers only worked 10%, but we didn't record any sacking of we did not record any protests, any mass trespassing of the lockdown. The population in its significant majority accepted the extreme measures and stayed under an unprecedented level of discipline and solidarity. There was green numbers in all the municipalities of the country which were open. Emergency group formed by civil society, young people and mayors and local staff to intervene to help all people and vulnerable people, handicapped people with shopping and basic needs. The financial aid also was distributed door to door for these people who couldn't go to the post offices. I think our small country, our small people succeeded in this challenge, but now we are facing the after COVID situation, which is more difficult. We have a huge budget deficit. We're expecting -6 economic rate. So we're facing a very, very difficult situation. I think also I would say that in this in this challenge we were hugely helped, especially on the local level by our partners, international partners. They gathered all the financial partners of Tunisia in that following this experience of decentralization. They gathered to provide help to all the municipalities with the basic needs to face the pandemic. 10 million dinars were distributed to all the municipalities from our partners. Now I think we need more solidarity between states, not within states, to help the underprivileged countries that were hit by this pandemic to face the aftermath situation. We rely on all our friends and traditional partners to follow Tunisia, to help Tunisia, to stay beside of Tunisia. We are facing now this week started protests started in the traditional regions, the underprivileged regions in the south of the country. We are expecting more protests, more instability because of huge deficit in the budget. So I think the Tunisian model, the Tunisian democratic transition and adventure needs and deserve to be supported by our friends. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency Zaytoun, for this overview or the exhaustive report about the experience of Tunisia. So we are exchanging lessons. We move now to the Excellency, the Ambassador Helga Metsi, the Senior Diplomatic Coordinator to the President of the Republic of Malta. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Professor Suhami. And of course, I should begin by giving His Excellency's salutations to His Excellency Albabtain.
Helga, please, let's adjust the sound. We are not listening to you well. Can you check what is?
Yes, do our best to look into that.
Closer to the mic.
Is this better, Professor?
Yes.
Much better now.
That's lovely.
Okay.
Thank you. So very shortly, I should begin by thanking the Albabtain Foundation. Professor Tuhami, you are very much aware of His Excellency President George Vella's commitment to the vision of the foundation. He asked me to convey his warmest greetings to you and to His Excellency Albabtain, and of course to reiterate the invitation you already conveyed for the meeting in Malta in November, which we are very much looking forward to, and we hope that all of you, or most of you, could join us on that occasion. A very warm hello goes to Dr. Frenda, and of course to Helena. Helena, I remember when you visited us in Malta for the Alliance of Civilization conference. We hope to have you back in November. I'd like to begin, first of all, with the general concept of solidarity that you, Professor, touched upon. And you very rightly stated that it touched upon our social interactions and social contracts. And I think further reflection needs to be done here, linking also to the aftermath scenario that we should all be looking at very shortly, if not imminently. I'm here to give you a basic overview of what Malta solidarity was all about, both locally and internationally. Our scenario was quite encouraging. So the figures in our case were quite low. Of course, our population is what it is, but we've only registered 9 deaths, all of whom had chronic conditions. So thankfully, we managed to safeguard the country from a terrible scenario. The kind of pattern that we formulated was to find a balance between what the local scenario dictated, we're a small island in the Mediterranean, and what was being decided or advised at a supranational level. So the WHO directives, we followed what other countries did and followed their best practices. So I think we managed to strike a very good balance there. I think we were not immune to the effects in terms of social interaction. We had families who could not meet. We had businesses that had to close down or reduce their employment numbers. So our life as we knew it on the island drastically changed. We also had to sort of revolutionize our health system. We have one hospital in Malta, and we were working on a worst case scenario. So we had to transform in a matter of a couple of days, I would say, the whole health sector. And I think we worked miracles there. Thankfully, we did not come to need the amount of beds we were fearing that we should be using. But this created an earthquake in our system. We're a small infrastructure, and we had to work round the clock to transform the whole country's infrastructure in a few words. I think one of the lessons we learned locally is that while we had to observe what was going on internationally, there was not one size that fits all. So every country and every society had to come up with a balance of factors that matches its own characteristics. And I think we could apply this to several other scenarios that we can observe and adapt what is applicable to our scenes. The point made by Dr. Frendo to us, a small country, on multilateralism is hugely important. As I said, geographically, we are isolated. We have limited means and a limited infrastructure. So we are possibly a living example of how not any country can do this alone. We had to rely on a multilateral system. If there was ever a moment where we had to look at evidence that the multilateral system is still alive, perhaps despite its defects, because there were glitches along the way, but countries like Malta and others, possibly your own countries, really could not have made this step forward without a successful multilateral system. So we were always keen believers on the multilateral system, and this was a living case in point for us. In terms of effective solidarity, government took a number of steps. We, of course, rely very heavily on the tourism sector in Malta. It's a pillar of our economy. So it was, especially now in the summer months, we had a very big hit. So one of the sectors that government directed its help towards was the tourism sector. We will be looking at very reduced numbers. Our airports have been closed for months now, and they will start opening gradually on the 1st of July. So the hospitality, the catering industries took a very big blow. So government looked at these sectors by investing 100 million euros immediately, as early on as March. And there was a waiver of tax payments for the months of March and April, so as to alleviate the impact. Another 1.8 billion went to businesses because businesses and retail was very badly hit in Malta. Of course, people were adhering to the directives issued by the health authorities. Most of the purchasing was being done online, so the retail industry and the trade industry, the trade sector suffered a very big blow. So this was another sector that government looked at by investing 1.8 billion. Another measure that we took to help families now, because we're not just looking at entities, this is a virus that hit people and hit families. And there were cases where parents still had to go to work while schools were closed. So there was a very strong social element in terms of government aid. And a monthly payment was given to parents who had to stay home to take care of their children because the schools were closed. And we felt that this was a very good step forward to contain the spread of the virus. On the international front, despite our limited means, we made a few donations of protective gear and visors to a number of countries, both in Europe, as well as beyond. I can mention Italy, France, Croatia, Libya, Palestine, for example, but even as far away as Liberia. So in this general expression of international solidarity, we, despite our limited means, also tried to do our best and participate where we could. Something that government did at a very successful rate was the repatriation of foreigners. And what was very innovative in our approach was that the government of Malta paid for the repatriation. So not only the service was provided, but also payment for those who especially were employed in Malta and regrettably lost their jobs here. So we took care of taking them back home safely at the cost of at government's expense. And we were looking at 5,000 people on that front. So you can imagine the investment into the infrastructure that was required there. One other gesture that we embarked upon was the exportation of Maltese potatoes, which are a very popular export towards Europe. And this time we directed an export of 500 tons to an African country, to Namibia. And this was done to, of course, alleviate the crop shortage that was brought about by the COVID pandemic. And we consider this to be a further very positive expression of solidarity further south this time around, not in Europe, with an African country. The president himself, President Vella, took it upon himself also to express solidarity. We started by calling in the frontliners. We called in the medics, nurses, teachers, everyone who had a role in keeping our people safe and keeping the country running, literally. And the president was very keen on thanking them personally and listened to their experiences. For example, the very dire situation that nurses faced. Some of them left their homes because they were engaged in hospital duties and had to give up their homes and be separated from their families. So despite the numbers and the figures and the statistics, these are very human stories that are moving in most cases. The president also spoke to most of his counterparts. So he called and wrote to other heads of state, not only on the European continent. We received several calls of expressions of solidarity, but we also took the initiative to express support, first of all, to the administrations that were dealing with very difficult circumstances, you know, with larger countries even very close to us in our neighborhood, but also to express solidarity at a people-to-people level. So His Excellency was very keen on giving this further push to the solidarity that was coming out of Malta to most of our partners, I would say. When it comes to lessons learned, and I think a point was made earlier on how we can now translate what we've learned from COVID to our normal lives when hopefully all of this passes. In our case, because I can speak of Malta tangibly, the value of information was crucial. We safeguarded a worst case scenario, but by giving daily briefings. So our health authorities spoke to the people on a daily basis, on television, on Facebook, on websites. So we had close to midday, a briefing was given daily to the population. Directives were issued almost on a daily basis, and very importantly in our case in different languages, so not just in Maltese and English, but seeing that Malta is home to several foreigners. Our information campaign was carried out in about 5 or 6 different languages, among them Arabic, Serbian, French, German. So this reached every home and every individual really on what can be done, what can't be done, the numbers, the testing procedures, where to go to for swabbing. So I think this was a very clear lesson for us in terms of how information can be crucial also to avoid the worst scenario. One other lesson that we've learned, I think locally, and I think we're still coming to terms with it, is the importance of technology. We had reached a point where businesses were no longer open, schools were shut, even places of work were shut. Our public service was encouraged not to open its offices. So this is where technology really kicked in, and this taught us a lesson. We were not investing enough, and I speak globally here, we were not investing enough in keeping up with technological advancement. There had to be a mentality shift in terms of work, not meaning necessarily going to the office every single day, and we made it work. So I think we felt this very much on our skins, that without technology, literally the country would have come to a standstill. This did not happen because we preempted that scenario. Public service kept on running on telework because most of the ministries that did not require a hands-on work pattern worked precisely on that, you know, a roster of telework. And I think this is something we will take forward in the coming months. It's a tool that we need to start looking at more actively. And I think it might have created a bit of a revolution in the way we conceive of work and even schooling, because schooling in Malta was conducted over a laptop. So teachers met their students in the way we are meeting here today, and schoolwork and homework was performed in this pattern. So even there, I think we have touched upon a revolution on that front. On a more human level, I think one of the lessons we should have learned, and I hope we will keep on carrying this, is that all the artificial barriers that we have created for ourselves in terms of cultural, ethnic, and religious divisions really are just that. They are artificial creations, And this virus taught us that no one is spared. We are all in the same boat, and unless we reach out to one another, we will not manage to get out of this. So this is a human lesson, I think, that we have learned. And we hope that we will be able to translate this even in terms of international politics and global dynamics. We hope that this kind of lesson will make it to the agenda of the November meeting here in Malta. And I think it would be a very good opportunity to catch up on the post-COVID lessons learned. So that's all from my end for today.
Thank you, Ambassador Helga, for this overview also, and that you did go in details for what happened in Malta regarding the process of solidarity. All salutations and all thanks also on behalf of the President of the Foundation to His Excellency, the President of Malta, Dr. John Vella. I'm seeing Mr. Michael Fandu is back to us. Because you are seeing that I'm very tolerant in time, so I'll be a bit sharp. So please, let's not go beyond 6 minutes when speaking, because we have a very tight time. Dr. Her Excellency Haris Vongoli, she is advisor to the President of Albania. She is also an assistant professor of communication in the University of Tirana. So please, you can start your speech.
Can you hear me? Yes, okay, thank you. Also professor to political sciences. Honored participants to this webinar on COVID-19, thank you to His Excellency Mr. Albabtain and the Foundation for this opportunity. I am very honored to be among Your Excellency Mr. Sampaio, Your Excellency Mr. Frendo, Minister, Ambassador, and other distinguished personalities. My dearest Professor Ayad, dear colleague and friend Mr. Abrashi from Kosovo. It is very beautiful to see you all healthy and working for bringing positive changes to your communities and much more. Greetings to whoever will be watching this. COVID-19 is now a part of our lives, and accepting it and acting in accordance to it are both necessary not only for going through COVID, but also growing through it. Nowadays, we're living, as we all know, through hard times in terms of life security, health, economy, social wealth, psychology, as well as political life and its dynamics. This is a fact, but in order to live a good life, one must perform actions and behave in a way that is in solidarity with the community. Great philosophers such as Socrates and Aristotle discuss solidarity as a virtue ethics framework that should, of course, not to be taken for granted. Solidarity is culture, is a matter of mentality, and we Albanians living in the country and abroad have a lot of solidarity among us. Humbly speaking, I am privileged to represent today the President of the Republic of Albania, His Excellency Ilir Meta, who sends his greetings to you all. For the moment, Albania, of a population of less than 3 million, has declared 2,047 coronavirus cases. We have, unfortunately, 45 deaths, and in total 1,195 recovered. Since March the 9th, when we officially had our 2 first cases with COVID, and then the entire lockdown of the country, with limited exceptions, of course, for emergency reasons, we now have an increasing curve of new cases. The President of the Republic of Albania, though, has played absolutely a crucial role for the unity of the nation in times when Albania is having political culture and has been facing several crises and challenges, but he has been most importantly very careful in addressing the protection of citizens' rights in order for all those rights and freedoms to not be misused by the Albanian authorities in dealing with particularly the pandemic COVID-19. Following the lockdown of the country, we faced, of course, a slowdown in economic growth and a serious losses in particular sectors of production, tourism, services, and small businesses. Certainly, the major priority is the protection of citizens' health and the support with the necessary funds, particularly for the health sector. But the consequences for the economy have been objectively inevitable, as the IMF and other key players in our economy warned us before. However, it is vital to work every day to deal with different scenarios of serious consequences for the national economy and the lives of every Albanian family, especially those in need. The health of every citizen is, as we all know, an absolute priority, and that in this situation, maximum responsibility, cooperation, professionalism, dedication, and transparency are required. The President has constantly, and I have to state this, invited all citizens to strictly observe health protocols and the advice of specialized medical staff, and follow and implement also only the suggestions of state institutions. On March 25th, as well on April 15th, under the chairman of the President of the Republic, as he is head of state, we held 2 meetings of the National Security Councils, 4 in total since his mandate in 2017. And I say this because it's very important that he plays a role to bring all parties together. The meetings held, as I said, on March and April were attended by also, led by him, but attended by the Speaker of the Assembly, the Prime Minister, the accountable ministers, and also the head of Democratic Party. The meeting of the National Security Council was held in a very constructive and cooperative spirit, where President expressed the belief that in this spirit of unity, inclusion, and cooperation, of course, the country will successfully overcome this difficult situation, and not only for Albania, but for the whole world. We praise the importance of solidarity, the increasing of the efficiency of the measures through awareness, transparency, inclusiveness, and increasing of the spirit of cooperation. I have to state that the President has absolutely welcomed the position of the Council of Europe on the necessity to protect democracy, pluralism, the rule of law, and human rights in the context of the COVID sanitary crisis. As the Council of Europe rightly points out, this virus is destroying many lives and many other precious things for us, but we must not allow it to destroy our fundamental values and our free societies. His Excellency stated it is important that any restrictive measures and new law must be in accordance only with the Constitution and the general public national interest. Also, he has closely followed the concerns made public by various actors on proposing and approving changes to the criminal code. This content of Law 35/2020 that was passed lately has substantial positive changes that have reflected suggestions from the civil society, from the ombudsman, legal experts, and also us, the institution of the President. But however, he first sent a letter to the Parliament demanding that the new criminal code provisions be clear and not infringe on the principle of legal certainty. And subjects, people, mustn't be criminally prosecuted if they haven't been prosecuted administratively. He also sent a modified draft of the proposed changes to the Parliament, proposing milder sentences, including prison sentences for violations and for violators that those proposed by the government. Meta said that before these new provisions are adopted, the Ministry of Health, also the Committee of Experts and the Inter-Ministerial Committee of Civil Emergencies need absolutely to assess the legal framework related with the application of criminal legislation and the clear definition of the list of dangerous infections. The president, most importantly, has suggested that the government should start to launch a public awareness campaign on the new criminal code changes. That was a big change in our criminal code and constitution. The president has played also a very crucial role on the calling for the Albanian authorities to give a specific priority to the repatriation operations for all the Albanian citizens seeking to come back to the country during the lockdown. During this pandemic, the head of state has constantly held meetings or online conversations, also as other politicians in the country has done, with other countries in the region. And we have expressed our absolute gratitude for the assistance that the EU and its member states have given to Albania in coping with the situation created in the country. And don't forget that we come also from the tremendous, devastating earthquake in November last year, in 2019. And on a work meeting held in May, with ambassadors from Greece, from Kosovo, Croatia, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Serbia, and Slovenia, he stressed that the pandemic and earthquake that hit our country last November slowed down everything, but most importantly showed how important good neighborly relations are. He said that neighbors were the first to stand by us after the tragic earthquake of November. And of course, we must work constantly to further strengthen our cooperation in all areas possible with all of you and all friends and colleagues all around the world, especially referring to the cooperation in the areas of civil emergencies. This was my speech today. Thank you very much. I can't hear you.
Tuhami, you are muted, Tuhami.
Okay, now I can hear.
We can't hear you, Tuhami.
We can't.
Tuhami, you are muted.
Tuhami, you need to unmute. Tuhami, we are not hearing you.
Unmute your microphone. Unmute.
Well, it's not marked as muted on the system.
Yeah, it's not marked as muted. Maybe something is wrong with the microphone.
Maybe something else.
No, it's
yes.
Can I now speak?
Yes, you can. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Now we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Excellency Harris, for presenting this experience, great experience of solidarity led by the President, which is similar to the experience of Kuwait, Malta, Tunisia, and other countries. Solidarity is a great worldwide value. Don't forget that also His Excellency, the President of Albania, is invited to the Malta 2020 meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Meeting under the control of Her Excellency Helga, okay?
Yes, thank you.
Samar Haddadin, now the floor is yours for 5 minutes. Please be concise and brief. I know you are always dealing with such matters.
Thank you very much, Tuhami. Thank you to the Albabtain Foundation for this opportunity. I am humbled to be amongst this distinguished group of people talking about such important topic in such crucial times of human history. I would like to start by saying that with the spirit of COVID-19 and the problems resulting from there, that disasters, diseases, pandemics know no borders, no race. They don't respect any of the procedures that governments or humans put to separate each other in terms of political or legal boundaries. So they travel with the air, they travel with the winds, with the dust, with the goods, with everything. And this is one of many lessons that humanity is learning about the need to work together and about the solidarity. Man started alone and started with the tribe, started with the group and with the state. I think this is another lesson to tell us that size does not matter in terms of big, small countries or wealth, rich countries, poor countries, all will be hit if we don't take necessary precautions. Refugee problem is as old as man history, and ever since is growing. Today we are speaking about more than 1% of the population of the earth as refugees. 1 in 97 is a refugee, with challenges starting from home, starting from the way to safety in the asylum, if you are an IDP in your country or if you are a refugee in the host country. Challenges continue. Adding to it, the challenges.
Mr. Samer, hold on a moment. Mr. Zitoun, Excellency, he has to leave for some obligation. Thank you very much, Mr. Lotfi. And we applaud you all together for your
participation. I'm very sorry for that. We have a meeting now with some mayors in Tatooine. We have huge problems there. Thank you.
Samer, please continue, please. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We are talking about 1 out of 97 as a refugee or displaced person. This webinar comes 4 days after the International Refugee Day, which comes under the theme "Every action counts and every person counts." So this action from your foundation is a good example of the solidarity and the need to work together. And this issue of solidarity and work together, as an international lawyer, I always like to go back to the legal frames and themes, is part of the international customary law. We have the tools, but we need the wish and the intention to work together and to implement and to use these tools. So the international burden sharing as a concept and the practices as a concept is there, and the practices are there as well. Kuwait, if I may use the example of Kuwait because I'm working here, can be used as a good example for international solidarity, for working together. Kuwait is one of the top donors to international humanitarian agencies. Speaking about UNHCR, for example, in the last 7 years, Kuwait contributed with almost $500 million to global causes for refugees in Syria, in Yemen, in Iraq, in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Egypt, and beyond. When we speak about Kuwait, we speak about Kuwait. His Excellency, Mr. Abdulaziz Babtin, mentioned the examples, but I would like to maybe say more specific examples from an experience, institutional experience of UNHCR and my own personal experience. For example, the civil society and the private sector in Kuwait is a very active society. For example, the inclusion of all expats in Kuwait in the national plans and in the health plans and in the campaign that was held to help facing the COVID-19 experience. For example, Kuwait was the first country in this region to open or give license to international institutions to provide support to refugees beyond the borders of Kuwait. The problem of COVID is telling us that No single country can handle this kind of problems as much as the issue of refugees. No single country can handle this situation. How you say, from the shelf solutions. We have to think outside the box. We have to come forward with solutions, working together towards solving these problems. Otherwise, we will continue running in the circle, in my opinion, in a vicious circle of repeating ourselves and not learning from the history. I close here and thank you for the opportunity, and would welcome any question or query from anybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Samer, the head of the United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees Office in Kuwait. You did highlight also that Kuwait is the top donating country to the UNHCR and also to the World Health Organization. Colonel Miska, former Deputy Director of Training at Royal Military Academy, Vice Chancellor, Manchester Metropolitan University, and Pro-Vice Chancellor, Westminster University. The floor is yours, and please do respect the time. Colonel are always respecting the time.
Well, thank you, Your Excellencies, ladies, gentlemen. Can I be sure that you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Very well.
It's a great pleasure to join you. It's clear that we in the UK need to learn a lot from other countries now and really reflect carefully on our experience. We have a population of 67 million. By late January 2020, COVID-19 was a pandemic and had spread to the UK. 6 months later, there have been 306,000 confirmed cases, 43,000 deaths, the world's second highest death rate per capita. There's been a large regional variation in the outbreak severity, with the largest numbers of infections being in the capital in London, but the highest rate of infections in the less prosperous parts of the country. Healthcare in the UK is devolved to each country, so England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland each manage their own healthcare, and they've done so slightly differently. In early February, the government launched a public health campaign to help slow the virus spread and introduced the Health Protection Coronavirus Regulations 2020 for England. The Chief Medical Officer for England outlined a 4-pronged strategy to tackle the outbreak. The Prime Minister kept the UK open for as long as possible, resisting the kind of lockdown seen elsewhere in Europe. At the end of February, travellers from Hubei province, Iran, and some parts of Italy were required to self-isolate on arrival back in the UK. On the 9th of March, self-isolation was recommended for anyone returning from certain parts of Italy. Meanwhile, the government's chief scientific advisor said that we need to build up some kind of herd immunity so that we reduce transmission of the disease. But that could only happen if 60% of the UK's population was infected. More than 200 scientists urged the government to rethink the approach, because it would have led to thousands of deaths and overwhelmed the NHS, which was already struggling. In March, the United Kingdom government imposed a lockdown, not early enough, banning all non-essential travel and contact with people outside one's homes, shutting all schools, businesses, venues, facilities, amenities, and places of worship, all of which carried on business online in extremely creative and very positive ways. Those with symptoms and their households were told to self-isolate. The most vulnerable over 70s and those with serious illnesses were told to shield themselves. People were kept apart in public. Police were empowered to enforce the lockdown. The Coronavirus Act 2020 gave the government emergency powers not used since the Second World War. There was massive panic buying in the shop. On the 16th of March, the United Kingdom government started holding daily press briefings. On the 20th of March, it introduced a scheme to support employers paying up to 80% of the salaries of those who could not go to work, taking the homeless off the streets and accommodating them in hotels. Financial support from the government for the self-employed did not happen until May. All mobile phone providers sent out SMS emergency messages with advice to stay isolated. That was the first time this facility was ever used. On the 27th of March, the Prime Minister went into intensive care himself. It was forecast that a lengthy lockdown period would severely damage the economy, lead to millions of lost jobs, increase mental health, domestic abuse, suicide rates, and there would be collateral deaths due to isolation and falling living standards. We haven't yet evaluated the impact, but researchers did suggest that the lockdown could be lifted by contact tracing. 3 months later, contact tracing has been tested, but has not yet been rolled out. In April, all 4 national health services of each country worked to raise hospital capacity, set up temporary critical care hospitals. Emergency hospitals were built in London and Birmingham by the army to take the overflow. By mid-April, the NHS predicted it would now cope with the peak of cases, and it reported that social distancing had actually flattened the curve of the epidemic. In late April, the Prime Minister said that the UK had passed the peak of the outbreak. On the 5th of May, the UK death toll became the highest in Europe and the second highest in the world. In England, the Prime Minister asked those who could not work from home to go to work, avoiding public transport if possible. He changed the slogan, "Stay at home," to "Stay alert." Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland did not adopt the slogan, claiming that it sent mixed messages to the public. On the 11th of May, Johnson published a 60-page document called Our Plan to Rebuild, the Recovery Strategy. Implemented at speed should a pandemic occur. They were prepared to put their emergency services into action as rapidly as possible to contain any spread. They were well prepared to take the necessary action. They followed the 4 key stages of disaster management cycle very, very closely. By contrast, the UK government was slow. It was slow to raise the national emergency alert state. It waited until March to raise it to level 4. So the emergency services were not fully engaged to treat the virus as an emergency, by which time our health service was already struggling. After nearly a decade of austerity in the UK, the NHS had been pared to the bone. Europeans who were working in the health service had already left because of Brexit, and in order to deal with the shortage of staff and skills shortages in the NHS, we had to accelerate the graduation of new medical and health professionals, put them into hospitals immediately in order to cope with increased caseloads. Retired medical professionals were mobilized to return to work. The death rate amongst medical professionals was very high, and the NHS has been brought to its knees. Lockdown came very early in China and the Southeast Asian countries, and it was strictly enforced until the risk had lifted. European countries followed suit very quickly. For ordinary citizens in the UK, however, life carried on as normal for a long time after the virus had taken a grip elsewhere in Europe. While other countries were implementing lockdown measures, there seemed to be a lack of urgency in terms of implementing these measures in the UK. Whereas most countries closed their borders very quickly, the Prime Minister resisted this measure for the sake of the economy. Passenger flights were coming into Heathrow and other airports every day from areas that were known to be suffering from high caseloads of COVID-19. The emergency services in Asia were equipped with PPE and went into action to enforce strict lockdown and isolation measures very quickly. In the UK, police enforced lockdown with fines, but the government communication strategy contained mixed messaging, so the certain elements ignored social distancing for some time. This was then exacerbated when the Prime Minister's chief advisor was found to have ignored the requirement to remain at home during lockdown. There was a huge shortage of PPE, and the government prioritised the provision of masks for the NHS, quite rightly. Meanwhile, the public was being told that masks were not going to make a difference when it came to preventing the virus from spreading. So for the first few months, people were discouraged from wearing masks. Then just as lockdown is ending, the public was told that everyone would be required to wear a mask in public after all. So again, there was mixed messaging. Now in China and South Korea, contact tracing by locking into citizens' national identification numbers was a requirement at a very early stage of the pandemic. The evidence suggests that it was an important tool to contain the virus. A contact tracing app has been under discussion since February in the UK, but it has still not been implemented effectively. Overall, there has been a strong sense in the UK that the economy is perhaps a higher priority than the health and well-being of the population. While scientists are warning that the risk of a second wave is high, this is not the core message in the government's communication. So lockdown has ended, life has returned to a new, relaxed normal for now. And the lessons learned for us are many. We now need to reflect, listen, watch from our neighbours. We need to learn from the others who have managed the COVID-19 well. We need to prepare, we need to plan, we need to practice our exercises for the plan so that we can implement them quickly. And more important than anything, we need to develop our communication strategies so that it's clear as could be. Yes, rebuild the economy, but more importantly, perhaps now, is to rebuild society, to have stronger health and well-being, and we need to learn from others. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. We are also learning from the experience of UK, specifically the 2 days ago, or I think yesterday, this brave and courageous decision to come back to the normal life and to open the airports on the 4th of July. So people will be coming back to UK. Thank you again. Now, Professor Nabil Ayad is the Director of Postgraduate International Diplomacy Programs at the British School of Leadership and Management, Glasgow, Caledonian University, London campus. I have also to say that he was one of the main founders of London Academy of Diplomacy at Westminster 20 years ago. The floor is yours, Mr. Nabil.
Thank you, Professor Tohami. Minister Frendo, Your Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. You spoke about life back to normal. Well, I'm sending you greetings from London Open Prison at the moment. As you know, I teach diplomacy, international diplomacy at Caledonian University, whose motto is University for the Common Good. And today we are looking for the common good. I'll be discussing solidarity in tackling the COVID-19 pandemic within the perspective of science diplomacy, international policy, and solidarity in the age of geofear. I say the age of geofear because governments today are afraid of something, organizations are afraid of something, we as individuals are afraid of something. All I can do today is to move from my sitting room to the balcony, and even in the balcony, I am worried that something might come to me. That's why we are dealing today with the new technology, which has entered the political and social repertoire. Many words, many expressions, many phrases have come into the repertoire, like home isolation, social distancing, and test and trace. The most profound challenges which imperil the planet today are grounded neither in territorial ambitions nor in ideological rivalries. Instead, these wicked issues are rooted in science and driven by technology, and largely immune to the application of armed force, climate change, diminishing biodiversity, environmental collapse, resource scarcity, and pandemic disease, to name but a few of these complex problems, exacerbate underdevelopment and heighten insecurity. Unlike religious extremism or political violence, however, this new science and technology-based transnational threat set places and every human being at risk today. Science technology hold the keys to peace, prosperity, and good health, but they can also contribute to conflict and destruction. Today, they represent a double-edged sword which cuts all ways. The challenge of managing the global commons, including not only the oceans, atmosphere, polar regions, and outer space, but also the internet and cyberspace, has been compounded by an explosive growth in the use and misuse of social and digital technologies and communications. Absent improved performance in international science and technology policy, I believe that the global peace and prosperity will remain elusive. In the worst case, we will reach a collective tipping point in the not too distant future, after which remedial responses will be too late. A greater understanding, prudent planning, careful management, and informed action are therefore imperative. I'm comparing the pandemic COVID-19 pandemic into the Greek mythology Hydra monster, which confronted Hercules. Every time Hercules tried to cut off one head, two heads would sprout out. Similarly, today, COVID-19 started in Wuhan, subsequently Italy, Spain, US, UK. So today, the Hydra monster which confronted Hercules is like the COVID-19, which is in a mutating environment today. Thanks to the Abdulaziz Albabtain Cultural Foundation, whose initiative is to explore the implications and ramifications of the COVID-19 virus on the world population and endeavor to offer concrete suggestions for consideration by policy and decision makers to exercise and implement global security. As I said, I compared the COVID-19 to the Hydra monster. COVID-19 today is in a mutating environment. Obviously, the media has played a major role in either spreading rumors, etc. But then diplomats have a role to play in understanding, in communicating the right events in their receiving states. During the current and unprecedented turbulent times, it is important to bring experts from different sectors together: ministries, health organizations, universities, and international development, and to find an integrated and sustainable way out of the current and future health crisis. At present, many countries in the world are taking medical security and safety measures within their borders. The invisible and lethal spread of COVID-19 is clear evidence that the global health matters. Needless to say, the investment in health is also an investment in the economy, and investing in healthcare systems, especially in low-income countries, is not an altruistic act, but a necessity. A government policy is determined on the basis of advice from experts whose recommendations are evidence-based. Therefore, it is important to invest in expertise in global health, strengthen international cooperation in medical science that can lead to unprecedented innovations like vaccines and shared data platforms, and also create good conditions for achieving technical innovations as well as coordinating efforts across disciplines, medical organizations, and across borders, etc. I believe that today we face a turning point in the human history. We must decide which way to go. Do we follow the raging, angry mobs, or do we look to another path? Why not try a new path? Instead of trying to improve the wealth of nations, and let us try to improve the well-being of nations. In the light of the chaos of current global events, the well-being of nations and of citizens are of prime importance. We need to be proactive, and I suggest the following. Let us all work to the extent of our ability, bring about discussions and solutions to scientific issues that plague our world today. The consequences of not being proactive are too dire to imagine. We are victims of known unknown and lack of certainty. This COVID-19 is known, but the solution is unknown. What we are looking for is certainty. Governments have failed today to provide any sense of certainty. These negative aspects can be only overcome by solutions achieved through international cooperation on policy and solidarity among nations. We need to contribute to the global dialogue on science diplomacy and its impact on international policy. We must bring science diplomacy into the mainstream of international relations discourse and to the attention of political, academic, and diplomatic communities. Especially, we need to expand and enhance the role of the World Health Organization and universities in bridging the international science and technology performance gap. Finally, there is a dire need to address the plight of the dispossessed and oppressed people, such as the Palestinians, whose lives do matter as well, not only Black lives matter. In the past, we used to say love levels or ranks. Today, we are saying that sadly, coronavirus, COVID-19 levels or ranks. Hence, world solidarity is no longer optional, but as Minister Frendo said, it is essential. Thank you.
Thank you, Nabil. I'm speaking to my friend Samir Saran. I know you have another meeting, but you see people, they would like our friends would like to speak more about the experience, so you should resist with us. We will be hopefully closing at 2 o'clock, so that you can give your closing address. Isn't it, Samir?
Let me just come back to you. Why don't you continue with the next speaker? I'll just come back to you in a second. Let me just make a call.
Okay, you make a call, then you come back to us. Okay. So now Mr. Yahya Alibi, he's the head of ICRC regional delegation to India, Nepal, Maldives, and Bhutan. He was also the head of the delegation in Kuwait, and before that he was in Africa. Yahya, the floor is yours, and I'm a bit sharp regarding the time, so please 5 to 6 minutes, no more than, please. Thank you. The sound?
You can see, you can't hear.
Yahya, please press the sound.
Maybe we should go to the next speaker, so when he's ready, you can put him in.
Yahya, shall we move to the next speaker then until you arrange the sound? Okay, so we move now to Mr. Najib Friji, the director of IPI MENA region. Najib, the floor is yours. Meanwhile, check with Yahya, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Your Excellencies, my friends, dear colleagues, Assalamu alaikum. Let me start by saying, I hope everyone is in good health and that all your beloved ones and your countries and peoples are safe and well. I would like to thank the Albabtain Cultural Foundation and its founder, His Excellency, my friend Abdulaziz Albabtain and his team, for their platform in which we can gather and unite in our reflections on these unprecedented times and share experiences, and lessons. The outbreak of the coronavirus or the COVID-19 has in essence functioned like, I would say, a scanner or an X-ray. Not only it revealed the vulnerability of the international system to the pandemic diseases, it also laid bare gaps, inequalities, injustices, and structural issues that are now bubbling through the cracks. It has become clear that the international cooperation has never been more necessary. The International Peace Institute and its regional office, IPI, Middle East and North Africa, IPI MENA, are both committed in our support for multilateral solutions to transnational problems, and we remain focused on identifying effective and long-lasting solutions to the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. In this context, IPI has engaged with Albabtain Culture Foundation through our initiative, The Culture of Peace. And I'd like my colleagues to also focus a little bit on how the culture could be a dimension to fighting the COVID-19 and other pandemics. Instead of asking what causes war and how can we find and fight it, we must also question what makes a peaceful society and how we can build and sustain it. Exploring those connections between culture, peace, security, and sustainable development is key to IPI Albabtain Culture of Peace initiative. To achieve sustainable peace, we must go further than ending violence to build positive foundations for mutual respect, prosperity, and broad-based inclusion. Our initiative has advanced the culture of peace at the multilateral level with UN member states and international organizations alike, and has been supported by the Office of the President of the United Nations General Assembly during the annual high-level forum on the culture of peace at the United Nations headquarters in New York. On September 7, 2017, IPI, together with Albabtain Culture Foundation, co-hosted a policy forum on the culture of peace during the annual UN high-level forum entitled Advancing the Culture of Peace. The event provided input into the high-level forum by building upon the declaration and program of action on the culture of peace adopted by the UN General Assembly in 1999. My dear friend, Abdulaziz Albabtain, director and founder of the Albabtain Foundation, stressed then that the culture of peace is a continuous course that we must not stop to promote intercultural dialogue based on understanding, respect of peace, but also the outgoing General Assembly President, Peter Thompson, remarked that the message was a defining one in the development of the SDGs and represented the best framework for achieving success in the future. In September 2018, IPI co-hosted a second event during the annual UN High-Level Forum on the Culture of Peace, where Mr. Albabtain underlined, and I quote, that now more than ever before, for the survival of humanity, there lies the need to transform our perception of peace from possibility to necessity, unquote. Mr. Albabtain then put forward the Foundation's action plan framework on teaching the culture of peace through the creation of 17 educational manuals. Those manuals were presented at an international court justice gathering of political.
Najib, there is a problem in the sound. Najib, are you listening to Najib?
Social and 13, focusing on promising. Hello?
Yes, yes, we are listening to you, Najib, yes.
Yes, focusing on promoting a culture of peace through education with particular attention to the protection of cultural heritage. The event was part of the first annual World Forum for the Culture of Peace. It was co-organized by Albabtain Cultural Foundation with the support from IPI, the International Committee of the Red Cross, the University of Leiden, and the Carnegie Foundation, plus other prominent institutions worldwide. Today, my friends, the culture of peace has become a vital necessity. We have witnessed a backsliding on international laws and norms with the increasing unilateralism and national populism. This has been compounded even more now by the pandemic, as we see borders shutting, racism and xenophobia rising, and a loss of trust between people, governments, and institutions. We must create a roadmap to create a global movement on the culture of peace, and I believe 3 elements are essential to this framework. First, education is a vital component in this regard. Academic and educational institutions and organizations have fundamental role in generating responsible global citizens. Second, interconnected with education is the youth, sowing the seeds of a culture of peace, sowing the seeds of a culture of peace starts with the youth and children. In the MENA region, the youth currently account for nearly 50% of the region's population. In 30 years, by 2050, the MENA population is expected to more than double in size, with the biggest increase in Egypt, Iraq, Sudan, and the state of Palestine. There is an enormous potential for youth and our youth to become agents of change, and we must start with them in ingraining the mentality of a culture of peace. Third, I do not need also to remind you that women are significant to the culture of peace. Women are the cornerstones of society and consist of half of the globe's population. With their engagement, we can guarantee that peace and sustainable development will be achieved. And here I salute the Albabtain Foundation of having involved key women players in this webinar. We may be in the dark time now, but these key components, education, women, youth, children, are the keys to opening the door for a global movement on the culture of peace. The culture of peace strategy should be preemptive, preventive, and anticipatory to avoid conflicts, pandemics, and other challenges that may threaten global peace, security, and sustainable development. IPI and Albabtain Foundations are partners in this regard. We at IPI look forward to more activities, I would say result-oriented activities, to make the culture of peace resilient to upheavals witnessed today. I call on all of you and all partners to join us on this road to peace and sustainable development. Assalamu alaikum, shukran, thank you very much.
Thank you, Najib, for this very clear roadmap which we are moving on in partnership with the IPI. Yahya, are you ready now? Yahya, if you are not, if there is a problem still in the sound, please leave the Zoom and then restart again. Try now. No, Yahya, leave it and then restart again. Okay, now we move to Professor Luigi Moccia, the President of Center of Excellence, Altiero Spinelli, Rome, Italy. Please, Professor, respect this time of 5 minutes, because we are exceeding the time. Normally we would have 1 hour and a half. Now we are arriving to 2 hours. But it is good that we are listening to all of you in this gathering. Professor?
Okay, thanks. Thanks for invitation. Thanks to Albabtain Foundation for this initiative. I'm very, very pleased to join this meeting. I'll be listening attentively, and I appreciate all the speech all the speeches so far. It's a pity that obviously we have been a bit out of time, and I have to leave the meeting in 10 minutes at most, but I won't take that much time. Obviously, I was fearing that I would have be allowed even less than 5 minutes as agreed, but doesn't matter. Having been listening to this speech, I come to the conclusion that really, speaking of the Italian experience in particular, does make no particular sense because national experience seems to me to be very, very similar in many respects. What I want just to focus on are 3 points. First one about lockdown. Lockdown can be told as a policy choice, but as a matter of fact is a policy choice that not only in Italy but in many other countries was taken by executive authorities, governments, and implemented through executive measures, executive means, and governmental decrees under solicitation and with the guidance of technical scientific advice and coordination. So the point issue when we talk about lockdown is, correctly speaking, the balance between people's safety on one side and the guarantee of freedom of movement, freedom of residence, and economic freedoms, generally speaking, in today's globalized world. And this right balance is a problem. Has been solved differently in the various places, but still remain a focus upon which we should try to better think what could be a clear line of distinction between politics and technology and science on the respective side. Otherwise, this interweaving between these 2 aspects can become, in emergency situation, very problematic. As far as Italy is concerned, what I want only to say is that Italian constitution clearly states that health safety is a fundamental right. And being a fundamental right stands high in the settlements of Italy constitutional principle, and in emergency situation, it stands even higher than economic freedoms. But this brings out the other phase of lockdown. And it is the second focus, the second point I would like to focus on is social resilience. What is social resilience? Well, we have been listening to many interventions clearly indicating that social resilience is something which comes out of a mix of public and private. In Italy, for example, social resilience has meant that most of infected people were assisted within and by their families. And without forgetting the extraordinary efforts put in place by medical and health personnel working in the National Health Service, we shouldn't forget also that many of these professionals were working voluntarily. They were retired people, they responded to a call by the government, and they voluntarily entered into the fight against the virus. So this experience is an example of many other experiences which can be just acknowledged with regard to other countries, that social resilience is upheld by civil society actors, including families, and that public assistance intervention generally tends to be held on balance with volunteer association, charitable and humanitarian organizations. And that is another point of reflection of great importance to me. Finally, when we talk about solidarity, solidarity is now to be, as we heard, is now to be measured, is now to be weighed within a context which is evolving. Once everything will be over, hopefully soon, we don't know yet if we will back to the old normal or will be entering a new normal scenario. As regards new and exceptional issues, challenges, and threats addressed not only to humanity as living species, but to humanness as common good that unites people and makes each of us more aware of our limits, vulnerabilities, as well as of our responsibilities. So if there is a word that in a way can be evoked to represent this scenario of a new normal ahead of us, I think that solidarity could be the right word, but at the condition to understand it properly. And my final say is about a quote I found from Pope Francis when he defined not solidarity in itself but by opposition to something else. He says, Pope Francis, that too often we participate in the globalization of indifference, whilst we should strive instead to live global solidarity. Well, precisely this opposition, in my understanding, to global indifference, the search for global solidarity shall have to become like the search for a vaccine to make people immune and resilient against all that damages and threatens the common good or humanness. And of course, this will be a long and hard search, but the only one, in my view, that can truly dignify human life beyond and above any other material progress that globalization as such can accomplish. That's all for me.
Thank you, Professor Luigi. Yahya, Yahya, if it is not arranged this problem, I can propose that you record your speech within 10 to 20 minutes, then you send that to me because I have your speech in English, then we'll be broadcasting it in the TV channel and the YouTube in both languages, in Arabic and also in English. But meanwhile, you are trying when it is set up, please do it directly. Now,
hello. Tuhami?
Yes?
I will have to excuse myself because I had another commitment after 1 p.m.
Good. Thank you.
So thank you very much to all our friends, and I really enjoyed this.
Thank you very much, and we applaud your presence with us and your contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Dr. Frenda.
Bye-bye. Bye. Bye, Helga.
Thank you. Now, Emir Abrashi. Emir Abrashi is the analyst and former communication advisor to a number of presidents of the Republic of Kosovo and the first deputy prime minister and foreign affairs minister. Please, Emir, I'm again speaking about the time. 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tuhami. Excellencies, distinguished members of this panel, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor to be in this panel among you all. And before I begin, I would like to especially thank Dr. Nabil Ayad for recommending me to be part of this panel. I would like to begin my speech by first giving a very short background of mine, as well as the recent history of Kosovo in order to build the context of my speech. I'm a graduate of strategic communication from Abu Dhabi University, where I have been a scholar of Her Highness Sheikha Fatima bin Mubarak. And I have served with two former presidents of Kosovo, the third and the fourth, respectively. His Excellency Mr. Beje Patsoli and Her Excellency Madam Atifete Yahyaga. I have also served in Kosovo's Ministry of Foreign Affairs as advisor to the minister, and until February 2020, where I have mostly been in charge of communication and official correspondence, overseeing reform within the ministry, as well as a policy advisor on Middle East and Africa. Currently, I am a communications consultant, analyst, and associate at the office of the fourth president of the Republic of Kosovo. The Republic of Kosovo, as most of you might be aware, is the newest country in Europe in terms of statehood, with only 12 years of independence, as well as the youngest in terms of population, with 75% of its people under the age of 35. Since the end of the war in 1999, and up until the declaration of independence in 2008, the Republic of Kosovo has been under the administration of the United Nations mission in Kosovo, and until 2011, the Republic of Kosovo has had the so-called supervised independence from the International Civilian Office and the European Union Special Representative in Kosovo, who largely maintain powers over the local institutions, such as the power of veto on the decisions of Parliament and the government. The reason why I wanted to give you a short background and insight of the recent history of Kosovo is so that you have an understanding of how our institutions have worked and have functioned after the war. So in the beginning, we were under the administration of the United Nations and later under the supervision of the European Union. This has meant that Kosovo's new institutions were built upon the best international practices with very high rigorosity and professionalism. Kosovo is a success story and is an example of what can be achieved when the international community comes together as one body and works as such. Now, fast forward to COVID-19 pandemic. Kosovo has registered the first COVID-19 case in March 13th, 2020, and to date has a total of 2,268 cases, out of which 1,108 are recovered and 1,122 cases are active, whereas 38 of our infected people have sadly died. The death ratio of COVID-19 infected in Kosovo is 1.68%. making it one of the lowest in the world. These results are attributed to the decisive action taken by our government, thanks to our excellent health workers, as well as to the young population. The government of the Republic of Kosovo has imposed a nearly 3-month lockdown early on, when the first cases with COVID-19 have resulted positive. Only vital sectors have remained open, and even those with essential staff. The borders with our neighboring countries were closed, and the free movement of people was restricted to several hours daily. It is important to note that unlike our neighboring countries, and probably most of the world, Kosovo has never activated the state of emergency. The government has only declared a medical emergency, and the Ministry of Health has taken lead over the public institutions. The economy has slowly begun to open sector by sector in May, and in the beginning of June, most of the measures have been removed. During this lockdown period, the government has done an excellent job in managing the public health. However, it has been unable to do as good of a job in maintaining the health of the economy, as is the case with most of the world. The government has given a stimulus package for businesses, helping them pay salaries for their employees, rent, and has postponed the return of loans. Now that the economy has restarted, we are witnessing a spike in new cases. The new challenge the government now faces is ensuring that both the general public and businesses respect the social distancing measures as well as rigorously abide by the measures imposed. I must stress that Kosovo is probably the only country that has started this pandemic with a fully functioning government, and later had a vote of confidence in the parliament, leaving the country with a caretaker government in the midst of a pandemic into electing a new government in the beginning of June. Regardless of this, the National Institute for Public Health of Kosovo managed to do a good job in maintaining the public health. In the first part of my speech, I focused on the results of countries working together in the case of Kosovo. However, in the case of COVID-19, we have seen that countries have been left to deal with this situation on their own. Intergovernmental entities have failed to play their role in bringing countries together and fighting the invisible enemy as one body. The most disastrous case has been with Italy. Italy was left alone at the time when it most needed for everyone to come together. The Italian healthcare system was overloaded and was collapsing, while the European Union was nowhere to be seen, hence not assisting one of their own at the time when they needed it most. This situation has made a lot of people to rethink the idea of these intergovernmental organizations. We've seen this in practice in the case when the United States stopped funding the World Health Organization in the middle of a global pandemic. However, regardless of the skepticism around international organizations, I believe that these organizations are needed and necessary, but they need to be reformed in order for them to regain trust among the general public. This pandemic has shown us that we need to come together in order to survive. There have been success stories. Kosovo is among them. But now, as we are moving towards an opening of our economies and a return to normality, it is imperative that we all work together in order to make sure that we contain the virus from further spreading. It is absolutely necessary that we have a serious reflection on the role of each individual country, the role that they have to play in an international scene. If there would have been better communication and coordination among countries, we would have probably not reached to where we are today. As reports suggest, if there would have been better communication and information from the Chinese government, once the first cases started to spike, maybe we could have all come together and prevented all of this from happening. I'm convinced that in a situation like this, only solidarity among countries is the answer to a successful tackle of a global problem. I come from a country that has seen the miracle of the world coming together in order to solve a problem. And as a Kosovar, I am fully aware of how small one is if they stand alone. As a Kosovar, I know of how strong you are when you have friends and allies. Therefore, I am aware of the importance of solidarity, and as a global citizen, I actively work to bring everyone together in order to come victorious in the face of hardship and challenge. According to health experts, we are still in the first wave of COVID-19, and the second wave is expected to hit the world by fall. It is important that when this second wave hits us, if it does hit us, we do not repeat the mistakes we made in the beginning of this pandemic. It is important that we work closely together, have a good flow of information, and help one another in order to make sure that we come victorious in the face of such a challenge. I will end my remarks today by thanking the Abdulaziz Saud Albabtain Foundation for the wonderful work of bringing us all together and for actively seeking cooperation among nations and peoples. I am optimistic that we will manage to break the barriers between nations, reform the existing international organizations, and work closer together in order to make sure that the upcoming challenges do not find us as divided as this current pandemic did find us. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Amir, for such interesting speech. Again, Yahya, if you are ready. Yahya is not. So in that case, Yahya, anyway, I'm just announcing them that you are going to send us your video recorded, then I will be broadcasting it on the YouTube, on the TV channel, and all our websites. In English language, yes, in English language, and in Arabic language. So I apologize for Mr. Samir Saran, the president of the ORF, the Observer Research Foundation, New Delhi. Mr. Samir, the closing address is for you, recommendations. So we are eager to listen to you. Again, I apologize because we take you from another meeting, but also this is good to discuss with us. Thank you.
So, thank you, Professor Tahomi, and let me congratulate the Albabtain Foundation for putting this extremely insightful group together. I think the conversations, the experiences that people have shared today will clearly illuminate our responses individually, but also as a global community. And I think the word community was used many times. Communities matter. And even though we may not be able to meet each other personally, I think we must continue to build solidarity through digital means, continue to recognize each other's importance in global affairs, and continue to foster ties that will in many ways be required to respond to a challenge which is not going to last till November, but rather will have in its wake many multiple small challenges which might take a few years to respond to. And let me list three of them listening to what I have heard this morning. I think the first challenge that we heard this afternoon, was the failure of, or rather the frailty of multilateralism. I think what came out very clearly was that there was a degree of disappointment in how we responded to this challenge as a collective. It became a Darwin's world and everyone was serving themselves. Be it the hunt for ventilators, be it face mask diplomacy, be it the grabbing of medical supplies. We saw international institutional arrangements were not serving a human collective. And I think the first lesson for us going ahead must be to strengthen multilateralism. The response to weak multilateralism is not no multilateralism. It is reformed and strengthened multilateralism. I think we require a radically reformed WHO. We also require a global commitment to having a vaccine regime that will allow all the vaccines to reach the 7 billion people who live on this planet. We require a universal healthcare philosophy, and we require a commitment to sustainable development goals, because we have seen the weakest have suffered. Unless we can respond to the frailties that already existed, the next crisis will again infect and impact those who are the weakest. So I think the first lesson that I've heard from all of you today is a resolve to strengthen multilateralism, a resolve to reform multilateralism, and a dedication towards building a global framework that will help us achieve sustainable development goals and save human beings around the world. I think the second very interesting argument that many put forth in different ways was on the issue of the infodemic along with the pandemic. We are also having an information virus. Fake news, wrong news, misinformation, also deliberately misrepresented facts are beginning to hurt countries, communities, people. They are beginning to turn communities on themselves. This pandemic has not only revealed the frailty of multilateralism, it is also challenging the fabric of our societies. Brothers and sisters and neighbors are beginning to distrust each other, are beginning to look at each other through different prisms. And I think we need to rethink and recalibrate how we are going to manage digital societies that are now emerging in this period. The world is going to be more digital going forward. We are going to conduct most of our affairs online. And I think we need to start thinking about the sociological impact of digital societies. We need to invest a lot of money in social science research, in education, in skills, in capacity building, so that we can create stable digital societies. And I think that's an extremely important outcome. Otherwise, the infodemic will destroy more lives than the pandemic. And I think this is something that we need to respond to. The digital societies of the future don't have any governance frameworks to manage them. The world must now come together during this crisis and thereafter to build a framework of the future for the digital societies that are going to reside here. And finally, I think this also, pandemic also revealed two very interesting facts. Since I have been born, and it's been a while now, it's close to 5 decades, I have never seen a global crisis in which the United States of America was not leading the global response. This is the first time where America is missing. the contender for America's throne was perhaps a part of the problem. So you have the two largest countries, one missing from action, one possibly causing the challenge, and the most powerful countries around the world have in some sense looked quite poor in this particular moment. And this brings us to that third idea that many of you shared. I think we will have to put together a coalition of middle powered, smaller countries, regional actors, regional associations who are far more resilient to each other's needs. And we will need to we need to build a whole new architecture of regional and proximate cooperation that can fundamentally fill the gap of what we have been used to of someone else doing our dirty work. I think we will all have to start taking responsibility as individual countries. We will all have to start contributing to global solutions. We will all have to start looking at ourselves as providers of global public goods. And we will have to say goodbye to this star culture of Pax Americana, Pax Britannicana, Pax Sinica, Pax whatever. I think it's time now that the world community starts beginning to exert itself through its individual members, and all of us must seek a global order where every country matters and all communities are heard. So we need far greater pluralism in international relations, and I think that's the third thing I heard from you. My final point as I close, India is a continental-sized country with 1.3 billion population. It is not surprising that we are the fourth most infected country. It is biology. When virus spreads, if you have more people living in dense cities and clusters like India does, we will have more infections. It is also not surprising that we have a relatively lower number of fatalities per million people because we have a younger population. The virus meets the young population of India, and when it infects our older people, we have very similar fatality rates to Italy or any other parts of Europe. But the large young population is protecting us from the immediate impact. But we are facing a socio-economic challenge, which is bigger than the health challenge. I think our determination to lift our people out of poverty has taken a hit. We have lost a year, maybe more than a year. It is going to pull nearly, people argue, 100 million human beings back into poverty, this particular crisis. A large part of those will come from India. So we have lost some of the gains we have made in the past. Our socio-economic challenges are much greater. Therefore, our government's response has been, of course, a very sharp shutdown in the beginning, a focus to stimulate economy, especially for the small and medium enterprises and the informal sector. And now it will have to come up with new measures to crowd in global investments to build India again. So we have to redo much of what we have done in the last decade or more. We have to do it with greater intensity, and we, of course, seek partnership with our most important neighbor, which is West Asia, and which is from where many of you are sitting. So we look forward to a new era of cooperation as the world recovers from this setback. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Samir Saran. You did the sum up, and you did use all the recommendations. I would like to apologize again for Yahya, but I have to thank him because Yahya advised me to invite Mr. Samir Saran to join us. And it was very great to listen to you, and you are our partner from now and so on. Namely, I would like to thank Abdulaziz Saud Albabtain for organizing this gathering, the IPI Najib Frigi, the video of His Excellency Giorgio Sampaio, His Excellency Michael Frendo, His Excellency Lutfi Zaytoun, Ambassador Helga Metsi, Her Excellency the Advisor to the President of Albania, Haris Vongli, Mr. Samar Haddadin representing the UNHCR, Colonel Miska, thank you very much for such interesting intervention. Professor Nabil Ayad, as always, you are brave and helping us as a member of the foundation. And also you have some students, your students who are participating with us, namely Haris and Emir. Yahya Alibi, again, thank you very much. But you have to send me the video so that I can, okay, it's done, already done, and I have to translate into Arabic. Najib Friji, thank you very much. Because we started last 3 weeks boiling and thinking how to do something for this gathering, and we choose to
let me interrupt you by thanking Tuhami Abduli and all his team in Kuwait who are behind the screens, behind the laptops, who are organizing all that. I salute you and hats up to you guys. Shukran jazilan.
Thank you, Najib. So we decided with the Mr. Albabtain, after consultation between IPI and the Albabtain himself, to choose this solidarity in COVID-19 as an essential instrument in tackling the pandemic as a title. Professor Luigi Mocia, thank you very much. Thank you very much for participating. Amir Abrashi, again, thank you very much for presenting for the foundation and for our interlocutors the experience of Kosovo. Samir Saran, thank you for the deductions, for recommendations, and we are going immediately to put all the speeches on the website of the foundation, of the worldfcp.org, and also on the YouTube, and I'm going to send you the links so that you can enjoy, rectify if you have something else to add or to send us. And then don't forget Malta 2020, Leadership for Peace, under the auspices of His Excellency Dr. George Vella, the President of Malta, the 5th and the 6th of November 2020. We are challenging the COVID-19, and we will be succeeding in meeting face to face. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.